You already know the thing that owns you. You do not need it named. It is the habit you have quit 100 times and never once quit. The reach you make before you have decided to make it. The hand that moves toward the thing while the rest of you is still pretending you have not noticed. You swore off it last week. You swore off it again tonight. And somewhere between the swearing and the mourning, it takes you back, the way it always takes you back, without a fight, without even a struggle you could be proud of losing. And that is the part that shames you most. Not that you fall so easily, that the great enemy of your life turns out not to be a wall you cannot climb, but a small, soft pull you cannot seem to refuse, again and again and again. You have called yourself weak for this. You have called yourself broken. You have read the methods and tried the tricks and downloaded the apps and counted the days, and you have watched every count return to zero, and each return to zero has cost you a little more of the belief that you are a person who can change at all. Here is the truth no one has told you plainly. You do not have a willpower problem. You have been fighting the wrong enemy at the wrong moment with the wrong weapon, and you have been losing for a reason that has nothing to do with how strong you are. By the end of this, you will know the exact moment the habit actually wins. Not the moment you think, the real one, the hidden one, the moment that decides everything long before you ever feel tempted. And you will know the single rule a swordless Ronin was given to sever a habit that was killing him. A rule so simple you will resist it, and so complete that once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it in your own life. 400 years ago, a man sat in the wreckage of his own discipline, owned by a thing he despised, exactly as you are tonight. He was no stronger than you. What he was taught is the answer. Listen closely, because it is going to be handed to you the way it was handed to him. If something in this begins to cut true, a quiet like carries it to another person fighting the same silent war. Share in the comments the one habit you keep swearing off and keep returning to. Do not soften it. Someone reading needs to know they are not the only one. And if this is the kind of truth you have been missing, stay a while longer. Now, the road. His name was Kaito, and he had been a swordsman once. The war had ended, his lord was dead, and Kaito had become what the country called a wave man, a ronin, a warrior with no master and no purpose and far too much empty time. And into that emptiness, a habit had crept. Drink at first to forget, then drink because the day felt unbearable without it. Then drink because the hand simply reached for the cup before Kaito had any say in the matter at all. You know this man. You have been this man. The thing that began as comfort and became a master. The pull that started as your choice and ended as your owner, until you could no longer find the line where you ended and the habit began. Kaito had fought it the way you have fought yours, with shame, with promises, with grand mornings of fierce resolve. He would pour the sake into the dirt and swear before the gods that he was finished, and feel, for an hour, the clean fire of a man reborn. And by nightfall the fire was ash, and the cup was in his hand, and he did not even remember reaching for it. He despised himself with a depth you would recognize. He had begun to believe he was simply made wrong. In a mountain village he found an old smith, a man who had once forged blades for warlords and now beat farm tools out of cold iron. Alone, in a shed at the edge of the trees, Kaito came to him for a blade. The old man looked at his shaking hands and said he would forge him no blade until Kaito could hold one steady. And then, seeing the whole of him in a glance the way old men do, he said a thing Kaito did not understand. You are fighting your habit at the cup. No one wins at the cup. The cup is already the end of the battle. Stop here, because this is you. Think of the last time your habit took you. Where did you put up your fight? At the very edge, did you not? At the cup, at the screen, at the door, at the open box, in the final inch before the thing was already in your hand. You gritted your teeth, and you summoned your will, and you tried to refuse it right there, at the lip of the cliff, with the whole weight of the want already crashing down on you, and you lost. Of course you lost. By the time you feel the full pull of the habit, the battle is already over. You are not fighting the habit there. You are only watching it win. The smith made Kaito sit and drew a single line in the dirt with a stick. Every habit, he said, is not one act. It is a chain. There is the spark that begins it. There is the first small movement. There is the reaching. And only last, far down the chain, is the act itself, the cup at the lips, the thing you swear you will resist. You throw all your strength at the last link, where the chain is thickest and your strength is least. A wiser man, he said, cuts the first link, where the chain is a single thread and one breath of attention is enough to break it. Hear this, because it is the first piece of the answer, and it is already worth more than every method you have tried. The habit does not win when you give in. It wins much earlier, in a small, invisible moment you have never once thought to guard. The moment before the moment. The first link. And you have spent your whole life ignoring that link and pouring all your effort into the last one, which is why all your effort has felt like drowning. You were never weak. You were fighting at the place where defeat was already certain. This is the system the smith gave him, and it has only one law: find the first link and starve it. Do not fight the habit. Sever the thread that feeds it before it ever becomes a flame you have to fight. Kaito asked the old man how he had come to know such a thing, and the smith, who rarely spoke of himself, told him. He had once been a drinker too, deeper and darker than Kaito would ever be. He had lost a forge, a wife, a name, all of it poured out of a cup over 20 years, and he had fought it the loud way the whole time, the way the whole world fights it, at the cup, at the last link, with shame and oaths and gritted teeth, and he had lost every battle for 20 years. And then one quiet day, too tired to fight, he had simply watched himself instead and seen for the first time the small thread that came before every fall, and he had cut it once, almost by accident, and the chain had not unspooled. And in that one small severed thread he had found the thing 20 years of force had never given him. Hear what the old man was telling him, because he was telling it to you. The people who finally break free are almost never the strongest among us. They are the ones who fought the loud way until they had no strength left, and then, in their exhaustion, stumbled into the quiet way and discovered it was the only way that had ever worked. You do not have to lose 20 years first. You can be handed now what the smith bled for 2 decades to learn. The thread was always there. You were only ever looking at the wrong link. Kaito asked what his first link was. The smith told him to watch himself for 3 days as a hunter watches game, not to resist anything, only to find the exact thread, the first small thing that always came before the cup. And Kaito watched, and what he found astonished him. It was never the cup that started it. It was a single moment, earlier, smaller, that he had never noticed in his life. The moment he sat down by the fire at dusk with nothing to do and let the silence settle on him. That was the thread. From that one quiet moment, the whole chain unspooled every single time, with the certainty of water running downhill. Now go and find yours. Be a hunter of your own first link. Watch, without fighting, and you will see it. The small, unguarded thread that comes before your habit every time. The phone reaching for your hand the instant you feel a flicker of boredom. The route home that passes the one door you should not pass. The hour of the night when the loneliness opens and the old comfort answers. The habit feels like it strikes from nowhere. It does not. It has a doorway, the same doorway, and you have walked through it 10,000 times without once seeing the door. And here is why you have never seen it. The first link does not feel like the habit. That is its cover. It feels like nothing at all, a small gray moment of boredom or tiredness, or a flicker of some feeling you would not even bother to name. It is so small and so ordinary that your guard never rises, because you are watching for the habit, the great obvious enemy, and the habit is clever enough never to show its face until the chain has already pulled you halfway down. By the time the want is loud enough for you to notice, the first link is far behind you, already crossed, and you are not deciding anymore. You are only falling, and calling the fall a choice. Find the link that feels like nothing, and you will have found the only place the war was ever winnable. The smith taught Kaito the second half of the law, and it is the half that makes the system unbreakable. You do not cut the thread with force, he said. Force is for the cup, and force always fails. You cut the thread with a smaller, cleaner act, placed exactly where the old one began. When the silence falls at dusk and the hand wants to reach, do not fight the reaching. Stand and carry wood to the fire. One small act, chosen beforehand, placed at the mouth of the chain. The want arrives and finds the doorway already filled. Let that settle, because it overturns everything you have been told about quitting. You have been trying to remove the habit and leave an empty space behind. And a space is exactly what the habit loves, because nature fills a space with whatever is nearest, and the nearest thing is always the old way. You do not quit a habit by leaving a hole. You quit it by placing a smaller, cleaner act in the exact spot the old one used to stand. The thread is severed not by refusal, but by replacement, made at the first link, before the want has any strength at all. But Kaito was not the only Ronin who came to that mountain, and I have to tell you about the other one, because his story is the warning, and you need the warning more than you know. There was a second wave man in the village that season, a man named Daichi, and Daichi despised his habit with a fire that made Kaito look gentle. Where Kaito watched, Daichi raged. He fought his habit at the cup with everything he had. He white-knuckled the long evenings. He stood at the very edge of the want and refused it with clenched teeth and shaking arms, and for a time it looked like strength, and the village admired him for it, and even Kaito wondered if the smith's quiet way was the weaker path. You know a Daichi. Perhaps you have been a Daichi, season after season, the one who quits by sheer brute refusal, who stands at the edge and grits his teeth and calls it discipline. And it works, for a while, the way holding your breath works for a while. But no one holds their breath forever. Watch what the willpower cost him. Every evening was a war, and Daichi fought it freshly each night, from the beginning, at the cup, at the hardest possible link, with the full weight of the want bearing down. He spent more strength refusing the habit than the habit had ever cost him to obey. And a man has only so much strength in a day. He won and won and won, and each victory drained him, until one ordinary evening, tired in a way that had nothing to do with the habit, he had nothing left to fight with, and the want arrived as it always did, and there was no one home to refuse it. And the chain unspooled, and Daichi fell, and because he had staked his whole self on never falling, the fall broke something in him that the habit alone never could. This is the trap of willpower, and you must understand it, or you will spend your life in it. Willpower fights at the last link, where the want is strongest, and it fights with a strength that runs out. Every night you win by force, you wake the next night with less. The system does not run out, because it never fights the strong want at all. It severs the thread upstream, where one small chosen act is enough, and it costs you almost nothing, and so it can be done every day for the rest of your life. Daichi was stronger than Kaito in every way that looked like strength, and Daichi is the one the habit destroyed. You do not need to be strong. Daichi was strong, and his strength was the very thing that doomed him, because it let him fight at the worst place for far too long. You need to be the one who cuts the thread early, with an act so small that no strength is required, on the days you feel powerful and the days you feel like nothing at all. That is the whole of it. The habit was never beaten by the strong. It was beaten by the ones who refused to fight it where it was strong. Then mark what happened to Daichi after the fall, because this is the cruelest part, and you have lived it. He did not simply return to the habit. He returned to it convinced he was a failure, because he had believed his whole struggle was a test of his strength, and his strength had broken. So what was left but to conclude that he himself was broken? The fall did not just cost him the days he had won. It cost him the belief that he could win at all. And a man who has lost that belief stops fighting, even the quiet way, because why guard a door you are certain you cannot hold? This is the second wound, and it is deeper than the habit. You have felt it. Each time you fall by force and call it proof of your weakness, you lose more than the streak. You lose a piece of the conviction that change is possible for you, until one day you stop trying entirely and tell yourself you have simply accepted who you are. But you did not accept who you are. You accepted a lie that came from fighting at the wrong link. The Smith's way protects this too, because when you fall at the first link, you do not conclude that you are broken. You conclude simply that the thread slipped past you this time, and you sharpen your watch for tomorrow. The fall stays small, and your belief stays whole. There is a deeper thing the Smith taught Kaito, and you have to hear it, because it is the lie that has kept you a prisoner longer than you know. You believe, somewhere beneath your thinking, that the habit is who you are, that you are a person of this weakness, that it lives in your bones, that quitting means tearing out a part of yourself. And so a part of you fights the quitting, quietly, because a part of you is fighting to survive. The Smith sat Kaito by the cold forge one evening and told him the truth that breaks the spell. He said, "You are not the habit. You are the one who has been watching the habit. The drink is not in your nature. It is a path your feet have worn smooth by walking it 10,000 times. A worn path feels like fate, but it is only a path, and a path is made by walking, and unmade the same way by walking another. You did not become a drunkard. You walked a road so many times that you forgot you were the one walking, and began to believe you were the road. Sit with that, because it changes the whole war. You are not the habit. You are the walker. Every time you cut the thread and place the cleaner act, you are not suppressing your true self. You are wearing a new path, one step at a time. And the old path, unwalked, is already beginning to grow over. The grooves in your life are not your identity. They are only the places you have walked most often. And a walker can always, always choose new ground. And here is what the smith knew that you do not yet feel in your blood. Every single time you cut the thread early, you are not just avoiding one fall. You are teaching yourself who you are. Sever it once at the first link, and you are a person who governs the reach. Do it 40 times, and it is no longer something you do. It is something you are. The reaching slows. The thread grows fainter. The path you walked so smooth begins to close, and a new one opens beneath your feet, until one day the old want arrives at the doorway and finds it has forgotten the way in. Now let me take you deeper into Kaito's road, because the system has a harder test waiting, and almost no one is ready for it. The seasons turned, and Kaito grew clean. He had found his thread and starved it. When the silence fell at dusk, he carried the wood, and the chain no longer unspooled. And for the first time in years, his hands were steady enough to hold a blade. He thought he had won. He had not. He had learned only the first form of the system, the easy form, the one that works while life stays gentle and ordered and the same. Because grief came, the way it comes for everyone. Word reached the village that the last of Kaito's old companions, men he had fought beside in the war, had died, and the old wound tore open, and a pain arrived that no small chosen act could fill, a pain that reached past every thread he had so carefully guarded, and went straight for the deepest doorway of all. You know this moment too. The day the small system is not enough. The grief, the rage, the loneliness so wide it swallows every clever trick, and the old comfort stands there in the storm with its arms open, the one thing that has never once failed to numb you. This is the hour every method dies in, not the ordinary evening, the broken one, the day the pain is real and the habit is the only medicine you have ever trusted. And Kaito stood in that storm. And the want was not a thread now. It was a flood. And he understood at last the deepest law of the system, the one the smith had saved for when he was ready. On the ordinary days, you cut the thread, but on the days the flood comes, you cannot cut a flood. On those days, the law is different. On those days, you do not try to be strong, and you do not try to be clever. You only refuse to walk the road for the length of one single day, not forever, just today. You tell yourself, not never again, only not today, and you let the flood rage, and you do not feed it, and you survive the one day, and the flood, like every flood, begins to fall. Let that go all the way down, because it names every relapse you have ever suffered in pain. You did not relapse because you were weak. You relapsed because in your agony you tried to swear off the thing forever, in the very moment you could least afford so large a vow, and the size of the promise crushed you and you fell, and then you punished yourself for falling, which only deepened the pain, which only fed the flood. The clean way is smaller, not forever. Only today. A man can refuse anything for a single day, and tomorrow is also a single day. And that is how the longest roads are walked, one day refused at a time. This is why every past attempt of yours has failed when life turned hard. You were trying to win the whole war in a moment of agony, to vow the unvowable while bleeding. But Kaito did not vow forever in the storm. He vowed only the one day. He let the grief be grief, and refused to pour the old medicine on it, and woke the next morning still clean and astonished to be so. The flood had fallen on its own, the way all floods fall, because nothing in this world, not even the deepest want, can hold its full height for long. Then learn the other thing Kaito learned in that storm, because it will save you on your hardest night. He did not face the flood empty. He went to the smith, and he sat in the shed by the cold iron, and he said nothing of the want, only that the grief was heavy. He did not fight the flood alone in a dark room, which is exactly where every flood wants you. He carried it into the light of one other person. This is the part the loud way never teaches, because the loud way is built on pride, and pride suffers in silence and falls in silence. The quiet way has no pride to protect. On the days the want becomes a flood, you do not have to be a fortress. You only have to refuse the road for one day, and you are allowed to do it beside someone, in the light, where the want has always been weakest. Shame is the habit's oldest ally. Bring the want into the open, and you have already cut half its strength. Think of how your own worst nights have gone, alone, in the dark, in silence, telling no one, certain that to speak the want aloud would be to admit a weakness you could not bear to name. And in that silence the want grew enormous, because silence is the one soil it grows best in. You were not weak on those nights. You were simply alone with a thing that feeds on being kept secret, fighting it in the exact conditions it would have chosen for you. The flood falls faster in the light. It always has. And here is the part that should sober you and then free you. The doorway never fully closes, not for Kaito, not for the smith, not for the oldest, cleanest men with decades of steadiness behind them. The want grows quiet and quick to pass the more often you starve its first link, but it does not die. The system is not a wall you build once and stand safe behind forever. It is a thread you cut and a path you walk, fresh each day, watching the first link for as long as you live. The cleanest man is not the one who killed the want. He is the one who never stopped guarding the door. So let me leave the mountain now, and the village, and the Ronin who became a steady old man with clean and steady hands. Let me speak only to you, because the story was never the point. You were always the point. You and the habit, and the first link that feeds it. Here is what to do, and I want you to feel how small it is, because the smallness is the whole reason it works, and the reason you have overlooked it for so long. Tonight, find your thread, not your habit. Your habit you already know too well. Find the first link, the small, unguarded moment that always comes before the fall. Watch yourself like a hunter, without fighting, until you see the doorway you have walked through 10,000 times without seeing it. The boredom, the hour, the root, the flicker of feeling that always comes first. Name it, write it down. That single moment is the whole battlefield, and you have never once defended it. Then choose your cleaner act and place it at the mouth of the chain. One small thing, decided now in the calm, before the want arrives. When the thread appears, you will not fight the habit, because you finally understand that fighting the habit is fighting at the cliff's edge where you always lose. You will fill the doorway instead. The boredom arrives, and you stand and move. The hour comes, and the cleaner act is already waiting in its place. You sever the thread upstream with no strength at all, before the flame can ever rise to a height you would have to battle. And then you will begin to see your threads everywhere, Because the chain is everywhere, and every habit you own has a first link you have never guarded. The screen that is in your hand before you remember picking it up has a thread, and the thread is the small dead moment between two tasks. Fill that moment, and the reach never comes. The food you eat without hunger has a thread, and the thread is the walk past the open cupboard, the standing in the kitchen with nothing to do. Change the route, and the want has nowhere to begin. The anger you pour out and regret has a thread, and the thread is the first hot second before the words, the breath you never take. Take the breath, and the chain cannot pull. Every habit you have is the same shape, a thread, a chain, a fall, and every one of them is cut the same way, upstream, early, where it is thin. You are not learning 100 cures. You are learning one law and laying it across 100 doors. And on the hard days, the flood days, you will not vow forever. You will vow only today. You will let the pain be what it is and refuse to feed it the old medicine. And you will not crush yourself with the size of the promise. Only today, a single day, refused. And the flood will fall, because floods always fall, and tomorrow will be another single day, small enough to win. You will fall some days. Hear me clearly. You will fall. Kaito fell, and the smith let him, because the falling is not the end of the system. Returning to the old road and staying there is the end. Falling, and finding your thread again the very next dawn, without drama, without despair, that is the system. You were never asked to be perfect. You were asked only to return, faster each time, to the first link. And slowly, in acts so small you will be almost ashamed to call them victories, the old road will begin to close. The thread will grow fainter. The doorway will narrow. The want that owned you will arrive one evening and find the path overgrown and the door filled and no easy way back in. And it will leave a little sooner each time, until one day you will realize you have not heard from it in longer than you can remember. Not because you grew strong enough to beat it, because you stopped fighting it where it was strong, and starved it quietly where it was only a thread. Imagine yourself 1 year from tonight, not made into someone you are not, just a person who, for 1 year, guarded the first link. Picture the evenings that passed without a war. Picture the mornings clean, the hands steady, the slow return of a thing you thought was gone for good. The simple belief that when you decide a thing, you can hold to it. That person is not a dream. They are not waiting on more willpower or a stronger spirit or a kinder past. They are on the other side of one small rule, kept badly at first, then better, then without thought. They are one severed thread away, repeated for a year, and understand what else changes, because it reaches far past the habit itself. When you learn that you can govern the first link of one chain, you stop believing you are at the mercy of your own wants. That belief is the quiet poison the habit fed you for years, the sense that you are a leaf on the water, carried by whatever pull is strongest. The man who has cut one thread knows, in his body and not just his mind, that the pull is not his master, and that knowledge does not stay in one corner of his life. It spreads. He begins to find the first link in everything, the small, early moment where every outcome is still cheap to change, and he begins to live upstream of his own life instead of downstream of it, no longer mopping the floor of his choices but turning off the tap. The habit was only the first thread. The way of seeing it is the inheritance. That is the Japanese system to quit any habit. Not a war of willpower you were never strong enough to win. A chain. and the quiet wisdom to cut its first link where the thread is thin and a single breath of attention is enough. You do not fight the flame. You starve it at the spark before it was ever a fire at all. You already know the thing that owns you. The only question left is the one you have been avoiding your whole life. Will you keep fighting it at the cup where you have always lost? Or will you finally go upstream and cut the thread, find the first link? That is the whole of the distance between the person you are tonight and the person you have sworn so many times that you would finally become. You have spent years trying to be strong at the cup. You were never going to win there. No one wins there. The cup was only ever the end of a chain that began somewhere small and quiet and unguarded, in a moment so ordinary you never thought to defend it. Go back to that moment. That is where you live now. That is where the whole of your freedom waits, in the thinnest part of the thread, where a single breath of attention is finally enough. Go and watch for the thread.